Diddy's lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, went in hard on Cassie and on Jane, and it was dramatic. And the jury...
Even after the fact, when she would come to initially pay me when the situation was over, everything seemed like she was in a good-natured, good headspace, and I didn't get any cues that there was possibly distress or some type of things she was going through that might have been a negative experience. I honestly, in the moment, it just felt like this was a couple that were trying to explore certain kinks and fetishes, and I was just somebody there to try to provide the fantasy or help them create the fantasy. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Jane. Thank you for following along with us. That was the so-called Punisher escort who took the stand in this case. He was speaking with our own Vinnie Politan last night about his experience participating in what has been called in this trial freak-offs, hotel freak-offs with Sean Diddy Combs and his then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura. And from the sounds of it, Ventura was coherent and a willing participant, a star. Contrast to the government's theory that Combs used. And there's an allegation that there were drugs and violence used to support this sexual encounter. We didn't hear that from that particular witness. But let's talk about what we are hearing right now, because the defense is giving their closing argument inside of that federal courthouse. There are no cameras, but we are getting notes as far as what is happening inside, and to discuss what we are hearing. Let's bring in our guest who is watching along with us. National Trial Attorney Michael Jaffer is here. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to list a couple of things that we're hearing about inside of the courtroom because it's Mark Agnifilo who is delivering these remarks, and he's telling this jury that this was the prosecution's attempt to criminalize kinky sexual preferences and drug use. That bedroom, the intimate part of this defendant's life, is what is being criminalized here, that it's not racketeering. He says witnesses have been taking the stand and none of them have said, yes, I am part of a racketeering enterprise. He talks about this being a lifestyle, swingers, threesomes. But essentially it's being described as him mocking the government for an exaggerated trial. How do you think that is likely going over with these jurors? I mean, that's a defense they have to take. But I'm baffled as to why they didn't bring any witnesses, or at least Sean Combs, to the stand to say that, right? Because here's the thing. I said in the middle of this trial that if, whenever you are going to try a case, if you perceive there to be a weakness in your case, you lean hard into the strength of your case. So I say that for the government because the government knew before the trial started that they knew that the weakness in their case was the word coercion, right? How are they going to get the jury to believe that Sean Combs coerced these? People committed AA, had a criminal sexual enterprise, and racketeered his way to the top, right? How are they going to do that? They leaned hard into the strong side of their case, which is the grossness and the sheer depravity of his conduct. They put on
got $30 million. Diddy's the loser. He went to jail. So, ladies and gentlemen, he said, this is the modern-day love story.
On witness after witness, weeks of witnesses who just showed you that Sean cause. At a depraved lifestyle, they did that because they were hoping it would distract the jury when they went to the jury deliberation room on the word coercion. They wanted them to get to the word coercion by looking at the sheer grossness of his conduct and see no rational person would ever believe they were stepping into. That situation when they stepped into a relationship with Sean Combs. They never thought that he would use money as a hook for them to be part of this, and then he controlled them. So I think it's going good. Julia, it just baffles me that these very competent, capable attorneys didn't put on any witnesses. I mean, Sean Combs is a trained actor. He's acted in plays. He knows how to cry IQ, how to emote IQ. He knows how to do things that I can't do and most people can't do. So he would have been a perfect witness to carry that flag before the closing guard argument, because that would have been the last thing the jury heard. Before they heard closing arguments, you would have seen Sean Collins on the stand cry, beg, plead. I love these people. I would have never done that because the way they're explaining it. It's rational in a vacuum, but the jury are not going to deliberate in a vacuum. They just saw weeks of really disgusting, grotesque evidence put on by the federal. So we'll see what happens. It's interesting opinion that you think he should have taken the stand in his own defense. Let's actually stand by, Michael. We understand that we have Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft. She just made it out of the courthouse and has lived there on the ground in New York's final day of closing arguments. The defense is up. Kelly Craft, what can you tell us? Well, good afternoon to you, Julia. So yes, I just made my way outside the federal courthouse because listening to the closing arguments by defense counsel obviously is always riveting. The closing arguments are so critical to cases, especially a case like this, where you have to have both sides really weaving together a story. A narrative as to how they want the jurors to look at the evidence. So of course yesterday, we heard from the federal prosecutors. Today, defense counsel got underway just about 9 o'clock this morning. He is still going. There was a short break earlier, and we're hearing that the lunch break might happen in about 10 to 15 minutes. But when I just made my way outside of the federal courthouse, what Mark Agnifalo was talking about was that situation where Cassie Ventura had testified on the stand that Sean Diddy Combs had raped her. And really what Mark is doing is he's kind of brushing away all of these allegations, saying that, okay, really what happened here is Cassie was with her then boyfriend who she's now married to, and he saw a text. So all of a sudden her story was going sideways, so she needed to come up with a reason as to why she was with Sean Diddy Combs. So she claimed that he raped her. Says, of course, defense counsel saying this in his closing argument right now. Then what he was doing is bringing up some evidence of a text that the prosecutors used yesterday from Sean Diddy Combs, which was in August, in which the prosecutors were saying this is a confession of that rape. And Mark Agnifalo brought that text up and said, nowhere in here. Could anyone indicate that this would be a confession to a rape of any sort from any sort of the imagination? What it is him just saying, I wasn't able to turn you on, etc. He said, how could anyone get in there and get from that? That was a confession of a rape. So basically what he's doing, Julia, so far to the jurors is just trying to tear apart the credibility of Kathy Ventura and their relationship. Kelly, you are taking us there even though we don't have cameras. I'm so thankful that we have you to describe what's going on in there. Can you talk about what has been said that may be considered a mocking or belittling of not only the government's case, but the agents who went in and did this raid? We've been hearing some reports that Marky Philo has been doing that in a pretty strategic way. He really has, Julia. And I know we made some full screens we can put up for people because, again, federal courts and no cameras inside the courtroom. But he's really just phrasing this and putting this is not even really acknowledging a lot of the charges, just telling his own narrative, just brushing away those allegations. So he accused the prosecutors of using the racketeering power to criminalize Combs' kinky sexual preferences as well as drug use. Agnifalo said the jury heard two trials. One is told by the evidence about a lifestyle of swingers and threesomes, and the other an exaggerated trial as told by the government, and they said this right in the beginning, Julia. There is no charge here of domestic violence. Even Mark was just saying it as I walked out of the courtroom. No charge of rape. But look at these other charges that they're bringing forth. He also described Combs as a pioneering self-made black entrepreneur who championed diversity, equity, as well as inclusion. He said the employees loved him, even the ones who are suing him. And Julia, we heard that repeatedly on the stand throughout this case. Did they always like him? Mark Agnifalo said to the jury. No, but they loved him. They didn't want to leave him. Tay, and of course, Julia. That's one of the things the defense counsel is really hammering on with the jurors because we saw time after time. Each witness that got up there about how they really loved him. They admired Sean Diddy Combs. Even the women who are accusing him of the extreme violence. Talking about still being in love with him, loving him. So that's what the defense counsel is using. Kelly, I'll never forget your telling us about Jane hugging both sides and still living in a house that is paid for by the defendant. Thank you so much for that update. I know you've got to get back in to listen to more of those closings. We'll check in with you later on in the day. And also keep in mind, everyone, 7 p.m. Eastern today. Julie and Julie Grant and Kelly Craft. They're both going to be hosting a special hour, recapping the sex trafficking trial and everything that you missed today from inside of that federal courthouse as the jury moves closer to getting the case. So you don't want to miss that 7 p.m. Eastern, a special hour here. ATHP Puff Truth.